Welcome to the Young, Dumb, and Love podcast, where we talk about all things marriage.
Our goal is to help equip you to have a marriage that is better than you have ever imagined by sharing real-life experiences, getting into the nitty-gritty, and sharing practical ways you can start today. Let's dive in.
We were young, we were dumb, and in love, but we knew this was made for us.
Well, it's been another crazy week in the Garcia house. Well, it's been a couple of crazy weeks, to be honest with you.
It's been, yeah.
The other day,
Sick kiddos.
the other day, I just looked at her and my
Sick
eyes
kid.
were just, huh?
Oh, go ahead.
The other day, my eyes were just real big when I looked at her, and I was just like, I'm losing my mind. I think I'm going crazy. I cannot believe what's happening in my life right now. It's not bad things.
No, it's
just
not bad.
It's just absolute chaos
Crazy.
in everything that we're doing. And then we top it off with yesterday. Brittany comes up to me and she goes, "Hey, Julian, how do you feel about getting a vasectomy on Christmas Eve?"
Okay, none of that is actually true.
Okay, wait. Sorry.
One,
my brain went
I don't sound like that. Julian! One. Two, I never said Christmas Eve.
You're right.
Okay, so
Christmas break. Sorry, on Christmas break.
This is Julian. You know those people who have to tell a story and it's like, if the story was like here, then they need to pump it up so that it's like here.
Yeah, you got to make it more exciting.
You got to level it up.
Yeah, you got to level up.
You know, also
Level up
known
the stories.
as
Preacher.
pastor. Yes, pastor storytelling, where you're like,
That's so real.
I've heard the story a few times, but it
My
just keeps
favorite-
getting more dramatic.
My favorite about pastor preaching is you have to sit in every single service to listen to the pastor preach.
And you're like, this is not the same story.
The story gets more exaggerated and bigger and better than ever every single service. And maybe it's like talking about money. Someone gave me $100 by the last service. Someone gave me $10,000. And I'm like, what is happening?
We're not trying to be haters. I think that it's not just pastors.
It's
I think
true.
a lot of people do
Storytellers.
that. Yeah.
Hilarious.
Storytelling. Anyway, yes.
Also had a crazy week. Was at a conference all
Back
week.
to the vasectomy, though.
Okay.
Wait, whoa.
All right. That's cool.
Julian's going to get a vasectomy.
Go ahead.
That's
Go
all.
ahead.
I said Christmas
That's it?
break because you wouldn't be as busy. And then, you know.
Yeah, it's
You
a great
can chill.
time. I'm really
It's your
excited.
Christmas
I'm
present.
super excited. Thank you so much. Like,
Merry Christmas, you filthy animal.
You are honestly such a great gift
I
giver,
know.
and I really appreciate the thought
Yeah.
that you put into this one, and it's going to be the best Christmas
I
present
just can't believe we
ever.
haven't already done it. So,
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'm a little scared or something. I've heard it's pretty easy. It's not a big deal, right?
it'll be great.
Put in the comments. Is it a big deal? I don't know. But
Anyway, you were at a
yes,
conference.
I was at a conference this week.
Yeah.
We were running a booth. We purchased a booth spot at this conference for our business, and one of our businesses is called Brilliance AV. We do audio-visual lighting for churches and businesses, but we do a lot of cool stuff like that. And so we purchased a booth because there are going to be a bunch of leaders and from different organizations there.
Ouch.
And we made great connections. It was great. But lo and behold, the conference was not just at like any random place or anything like that, but it was actually it was hosted by the church that fired me 3.5 years ago, or 3 years ago, about like that. Yeah. 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And, it was a very devastating time in my life, and didn't really understand what happened. And their reason for firing me was, "You're a great guy, you're just not a great fit." And they said it over and over. That's all they would give me. And it was awful. It was like probably the worst time of my life, and it took a lot of time to heal from it. And there was a season where like I hated even driving by,
Right?
like
Like-
on the highway. Like I just knew that it was down the street, and I was just like, ugh, anger.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't sure how I'd feel about it getting on that campus. And so I drive up, I get there, and I was just like, I feel nothing. Okay, this is great.
Yeah.
I feel absolutely nothing. And I just went to work and did my thing, made a lot of connections. A few people avoided me like the plague, but that's okay. Probably because they know what happened was not okay.
Yeah.
But for the most part, everyone was super nice and great,
Yeah.
and it was a great time. And so it just shows a lot about what healing can do for you, because, if I were to try to do that 6 months after, I would have literally lost it. I wouldn't have been able to do it.
Yeah.
But this time it was just like no big deal whatsoever. And,
Yeah.
it was super, super successful, and excited to see what comes from it.
Yeah. Well, don't you think, time is a good time.
Time heals.
Yeah, it does.
Time can heal you.
Healing takes time.
Yep. You're not going to find healing overnight.
Yeah.
You're going to find healing through time
Work.
and work
Yeah.
and dedication. And the more you put into it,
Yeah.
to find that healing, the more you're going to be able to find it for yourself.
Yeah. So I have a question.
Okay.
What have you done in the last 3 years then to get to that place of healing? Like, what were the things that you did, or, like your prayers that you prayed? What steps did you take, to like not allow it to like control you?
Yeah.
And not let bitterness take root?
Yeah. Well, I think number one, I had to let things die inside of me. There were things about me inside of my heart and my mind and my soul that, I didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
And I was in the flow of who I was for so long that I didn't really actually know who I was, because who I was identified by what I did. And
good.
because it was identified by what I did, it was devastating to lose the one thing that identified me. Right.
Yeah.
And so I had to, in a way, deconstruct my thought process in life when it comes to who I am as a person. And God put me on this earth for a purpose, right? And I truly believe it's a calling, and everything that he's done in my life is what he's called me to do.
Yeah.
And even up to this point, like everything that I've ever done, I feel like God has called me to do that. And he's allowed me to walk through things. But I mistakenly put my value and my identity in what I did for a job, right?
Yeah.
And I learned really quickly that that's not what defines me. And so it was probably about 1.5 years of grieving.
Yeah.
And there was a season where I didn't really know what to do with my life. I didn't know who I was. I went through my midlife crisis at, how old was I at that time? 35. I really went through my midlife crisis at that time because
I feel that.
And then I didn't want to just go get another job at a church because I felt something I've never felt before. I was broken in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. And so in that time, I just deconstructed who I was, and I truly, probably for the first time since the day I got saved, found my identity in Christ rather than what I did for Christ. And sometimes I think about that. I'm like, well, I wasted so much time. And now that I'm not working full time at one church, it's funny because I've allowed God to move in my heart so much more now than I ever have. Yeah. That I'm actually way more effective for him than I've ever been. Yeah. And having way more meaningful conversations and seeing so much fruit out of it. Yeah. And so I thought the only way I can be used by God is if I'm a pastor at a church. Yeah. And that turns out to be the complete opposite. Right. He's using me way more now than he ever has. And so, so I just had to take time, like I said, take time, deconstruct, and find my identity through Christ for the very first time in a long time. And now I don't identify myself as what I do whatsoever. I do it and I enjoy it. But it's not, if I lost it tomorrow, I'd be fine now. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, we've seen this so many times that what happens is someone has like this, traumatic experience with the church. And then they deconstruct is kind of the word that's used, but they never really, like, they basically walk away from the Lord completely. Like they take out that bitterness and that frustration on God, Yeah. So what do you feel like? Did you ever feel like that? Do you feel like, what kept you from being bitter towards God? Or if you did feel bitter, like, how did you work through that?
I felt super bitter.
Towards God or towards
man, towards God, towards
all
everything.
The above.
I had so many feelings. I had so many. There were times where I would look at you and I would just start crying for no reason whatsoever.
I would see this.
Yeah. You would see it just come over me. Yep. And because it was bitterness. It was, I had a lot of hatred in my heart. I had a lot of, I
drafted so many like emails to send to
to the leaders,
somebody, and I just kept on being like, no, I can't do this. But
it was a terrible time. And I've always been a pretty happy guy, right? And just can see the good in everything. And for the very first time, I did not see the good in anything. Yeah. And so what was the question again?
Like, how did you not allow that bitterness, to like take root and like change your relationship? It did change your relationship with the Lord, but how did you allow it to change it for good? Because you see so many times people are hurt by man in the church, or they feel like God let them down, because like you moved here with me
Yeah,
and
I
our
moved my
two
entire
small
family
kids.
here. 2 small kids.
Bought a house, so now we have a mortgage. We have bills.
And then 5 months later,
And
gone.
then a couple months after, still in the middle of a pandemic,
Yep.
still 2021. So still, not a lot of easy ways to just whatever. And so how do you allow God then to use it? Because you see people just walk away completely like this.
All the time.
I'm mad, which, yeah,
I get it.
So how did you allow it to change you for good instead of bad?
So, I mean, I 100% could have walked away very easily and just been like, forget it all. And I don't ever want to deal with this again. Right. And so I think there's probably moments where I felt like that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, what I've learned, and this is stuff that I've learned over the years and just never really had to put it into practice until now. This is the first time I've had to put it into practice. And I had to remind myself that God is still God no matter what, and it's really hard to believe and see that sometimes because you're going through your situation and all you can see is what's right in front of you and you can't see 3 years down the road. You can't see what it's going to look like. All you can see is the pain and the hurt that you have right there in that moment, right? And so for the very first time, I just realized I'm like, okay, if I'm going to move forward from this, the only thing for me to do is to press in harder to God and not walk away from him. Because walking away from him is not going to do it's not going to bring me any healing whatsoever. It's just going to grow my bitterness. It's going to grow the negative things in my life. And so I knew that no matter what, I had to press in even more to him than I've ever have before. And so, I mean, I had lots of, worship crying sessions by myself in the car a lot. I was probably borderline dangerous because I was crying and could hardly see and worshiping and then just trying to take my kids to school or something, like stuff like that.
Oh, great.
But I pressed in and I asked every single day, Lord, what do you want to do with me? And because I had no idea who I was anymore. And I just asked for that every day. He didn't give me an answer for a long time. I mean, for a long time, I was like, I have no idea. And I kept on asking and asking and asking, pressing in. But I think at the end of the day, not giving up is the key to my success in my life, because I don't believe in giving up. I don't like to give up, and that's not really a personality trait of mine. I'm either all in or all out. That's basically it. There's no in between. And so I said yes to God a long time ago, and I've never wanted to give that up truly, and I just realized that no matter what, you got to press in, work, and keep asking the Lord, keep pressing in. The things that are the hardest in your life, if you work at them harder, if you keep on working at them, you're going to get better at them. You're going to get stronger, right? Yeah. No matter what. And so that's what I had to do. And that's what kept me afloat. And at the end of the day, yes, God and myself, but a supportive wife who loves me and takes care of me and can see that and didn't get mad at me for what happened, and instead she pressed in and she was my backbone. And a lot of times I just had no words or didn't know what to do, and she was the one who pressed in and, all right, let's do this, we got this, and that's the key to success, is me pressing in and my wife pressing into me.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
thanks for sharing.
But we're great. We're doing so good.
No, I think, it's just so funny because you're like, when you told me that that's where you were going to be, we kind of laughed and we're like, oh my gosh. But again, I love to see how it's like something that can cause you so much pain. Eventually, that pain can be healed. Doesn't mean it's not there, that it didn't happen, that you don't acknowledge it, but that it really can,
And somebody asked me, they go, how are you doing now? And I said, I'm doing amazing, actually. Yeah. My life is so good and never been better. Yeah. And they're like, well, what did you do to come to that place, And it's just came to mind to kind of just back off or piggyback on what I said earlier. But I just said, here's the thing. Sometimes God takes crappy situations.
Oh, yeah.
He takes things that you go through that don't make any sense and just look like garbage. Yeah. And he makes something beautiful out of it. Yeah. And that's what he did. Yeah. And I'm better now than I ever have been because of this situation. Yeah. And so I look at that and it sucked and it was the worst time of my life. But the worst time of my life was me being the seed being planted into the ground and then God watering it and then becoming a beautiful flower. Like that's basically what it is.
Yeah.
And it hurt. I had to break through the shell. I had to push through the dirt. And at the end of the day, when I came out, saw the sun and bloomed, like that's where I'm at today. And it's because of the pain and the hurt that I went through. And I'm okay with that. And so now I'm like, bring on the pain, you know, bring on the hurt.
No, don't.
because God will do amazing things in those, you know. And so the worst thing that ever happened to me was that. But at the same time, it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, that's the thing. Like God is in the business of restoring and redeeming and all things together for those who love him.
that is correct.
So we can
Correctamundo.
we can drive past there now and you don't want to flip it off when you're driving by.
That's true. That's true.
I'm kidding.
That's real.
Never
no,
do that.
that's 100% real. I definitely wanted to do that.
100%. Absolutely. Yeah.
It was a journey, but
It is a journey.
it's just funny because, you know, for the very first time in our lives, we've moved around a lot. We've done a lot of things. And for the first time, we're just like, this is home. This is where we want to be. So no matter what the situation was, we're like, we're not moving again. Like we love our home. We love this state. We love what we're doing and what we get to do. And so
we just dug our heels in.
We dug our heels in. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
That's what we did.
We dug our heels in and said, nope. We're not going to let any situation control us.
Yeah, it's good.
What about you? So I was going through all this as your husband, and it was, I'm sure it was not fun for you, and it was devastating to watch me go through this. But what kept you afloat? And you've always kind of dealt with, you know, mental health and struggled with things. Like I'd never understood that until that time. Like for the very first time I felt what you felt or feel a lot of times. And so how did you stay strong and push through in all that situation?
It's a great question.
It's a loaded question.
It's a loaded question. Well, and I feel like it was so long ago, you know, and
okay,
we were
so
kind of living on like,
just start from the moment I get home early from work and you're like, what are you doing home?
I mean, I feel like, you know, the beautiful thing is, as much as I don't think, I mean, obviously I know bad things don't come from God. I know he prepares us before they're coming, you know, and because I didn't freak out, which is kind of
bizarre,
shocking. Yes and no, because I've matured a lot, but there have been seasons where if you would have said that to me, I would have been like, you know, hyperventilating or freaking out. But I just like had honestly, it was Jesus. Cause like immediately I just like, okay, come sit down. Like, let's pray. Our kids were home. So that was hard, but we had someone staying with us at the time. So I had her take, you know, I think only the little one was home, but we had to pick up the older one in like an hour. We had like very minimal time to process this before there was an audience, which is always tricky too. Yeah. But I just knew that in that moment I was facing two opportunities, either totally mess this up and make it worse or try to help and make it better. And by the grace of God, I chose that path to try to make it better. So we just prayed and then we were like, okay, we're going to figure it out. You know, I didn't have a job at the time.
Nope.
I was still working on transferring my license for real estate over, you know, to Arizona. And so I was like, well, gonna light a fire under me. Sometimes I need a fire lit under me because, you know, I can procrastinate. But I just knew that that's what you needed, you know, and I think there's seasons in marriage where it's like one spouse is really going through something and the other one has the opportunity to come alongside them and be a champion and support them and love them, or you can be part of the problem, you know? And so I think that that's oftentimes what happens is if we don't allow our spouse to walk through those things, then we don't get to that other side where we are now. You know, if you would have had to like suppress it, or if I'd have been like, well, you need to go get a job in the next 10 days or, you know, whatever. But I was like, okay, Lord, like you do what only you can do, you know? And so I think that for so long, and I think we learned this when that happened, for so long, we were always like trying to orchestrate life the way we wanted it to be, or we thought it should be. Like, no, this makes sense. Like, of course, we both work full time at churches. Like, how could this not be the right thing to do? Or like, we're gonna move here because this is where we want to be, or the church we want to work at. And I think once we moved here, we kind of both just decided, especially after that, like we're done. trying to figure things out on our own, try to make God's plan fit into our plan because we've actually really sucked at it for the most part.
It's true.
And I think when we both acknowledged that fact, which is kind of a hard conversation to have.
Very hard.
And like very humbling to be like, hey, I think that we've made some mistakes and some wrong turns. Like not together, but like in our career or like places we decided to move or work. I think we forced things.
Yeah.
And so when we had that conversation and then this happened, it was kind of like, okay, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm tired of trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I think that because we got to that point, like now we're starting to see the fruit of it. And it's been a long time. Like these 3 years have been some of the hardest 3 years that I think that we've ever had, but also the best 3 years we've ever had, I would say, like in our marriage, as parents, as people.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know. Do you agree?
No, 100%.
Like, you know, just kind of when we both decided to take our hands off the steering wheel and let God take over. Jesus, take the wheel. You know? Yeah, whatever. You kind of see like, okay, like I can't be in control anymore because one, it's exhausting.
It is.
And two, I'm really bad at it.
So true.
You know, I still try to control some things, but it's a process.
I mean, you are a completely different person.
It's a process.
Since this situation.
So I think that's what I would say. Like we just kind of got to the point where it was like, okay, we don't know what's going on or why this is happening, but we're going to trust that the Lord has a plan. And I mean, here's the thing, like doors opened a lot slower than I would have liked them to. I'm just gonna be honest. Like
for sure.
I would have loved for like Julian's business to be where it's at now 2 years ago.
For sure.
You know, so it's taken 3 years. I would love to say that this was my best year ever in real estate.
Nope.
It's not. Things have been like doors have opened slower, but that doesn't mean they aren't opening because they are and they're amazing. It's just like, just so different. I don't know. So different. So I guess, I mean, to answer your question, like just decide I'm not in control. I'm going to support my spouse. That's what I signed up to do. That is what when I said I do, like it's a covenant relationship. We are one. I'm going to support you. And I think too, like sometimes, I know I'm talking a lot, but it's just what I do. I think sometimes too, like the Lord gives you this grace to see your spouse, not just as your spouse, but like who they are to him as a person. Like, and when I started to acknowledge that, which I don't even really remember when that was, but when I really allowed the Lord to show me like, this is my Julian. This is my son who I love, who I have dreams for, who I have desires for. He's hurting. I want you to love him. Yeah. Like it just changed something in me. Like I look at you as like, yes, you're my husband. Yes, I love you. But like you are
God's son.
Yeah. And like you are a person like you, and which you are, which I know that sounds so weird. And maybe people will capture what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
but like,
I get it.
It's not just like, oh, that's Julian, my husband. Like you're a whole person with dreams and goals and desires. And as your wife, I'm called to come alongside that whole self, not just the part of you that's here to serve me. I do like that part the most probably, but
the part I just serve you.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that part, you know, it's just like deeply humbling.
It is.
And I think we both have had 3.5 years since we've moved here. They're just like deeply humbling.
Deeply.
Like, you know, if you would have looked at like what we did before and like our titles, if you want to call them that, people would have been like, you like kind of had it made. Like,
what were you thinking?
What were you thinking? And like, you know, but that's the thing is the things that the Lord calls you to do sometimes like don't actually make any sense, or they don't really make any sense. I mean, we see it time and time again. And if you're someone who reads the word, you know, too, like, okay, walk on water. What? That's crazy. Walk across the sea, like go into a lion's den. Like there's so many times where it's like, that doesn't make any sense.
So true.
So that is that.
So nothing makes sense, but we trust the Lord.
That's not true. Some things make perfect sense, but I would argue that they make sense after you've walked in obedience.
Yeah, it may not make sense while you're doing it.
After you've walked in obedience and just keep walking. The problem is we stop, and then we're just like, nope, I'm
We
not
give
doing
up.
this anymore.
Give up
And
too easily.
It's sad, and I get it. You know, there's
Well, it's just like when you were talking
pain
about walking on water. And he calls out to Jesus, and
Oh, yeah.
Jesus says, "Come and walk on the water with me," right? And
Yeah.
he steps out.
Yeah.
But as soon as he takes his eyes off of Jesus,
Right.
he falls into the water.
he's like, "Help me."
Help
Yeah.
me, you know. And
Yeah.
that's exactly what happens to people. We have all the faith in the world, but when we're actually walking through the issues in our world,
Yeah.
we take our eyes off of Jesus because we can only see what's right in front of us, the scariness of what's right in front of
Yeah.
us, and we fall into the water. And that's not the way God has intended us to live our lives. He's intended us to keep our eyes on him at all times.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny because even like with us, there's times I'm not a very expressive person. Like it takes, like I am, but I'm also not at the same time. Like it depends
Yeah.
on the situation, what's going on. But for the most part, I'm not. And so there's a lot of times Brittany's like, are you good? Is your
Yeah, 'cause it's just
relationship
like-
with the Lord good?
Yeah.
I'm like, it's actually awesome. Like better than it's ever been. And it's great. And my expression is not there, but I am totally there. But what I'm trying to say is the reason I say that is because there's a lot of times when you may not see something inside of somebody, but if you can communicate and have that conversation with them and make sure, you know, especially with your wife and your husband, when you see something inside of them, just have the it's better that she asked me if I'm okay
Yeah.
than for her not to. And because I could not be okay. And if she never asked me, I'd probably never tell her, you know, like that's just my personality. And so it's so important for you and your spouse to have those conversations so that when you are walking through troubled times, they feel like confidence to be able to talk to your spouse, and they feel confidence in your husband and your wife. And,
Yeah.
and when you're going through that, you're going to be able to, so at the end of the day, you're going through that, you have your spouse. The biggest thing for you to have a successful relationship with yourself and God and walk through this together is to literally hold hands and walk through it together. And be honest, talk to each other and have that conversation, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's what was the key for me getting out of all of that was you holding my hand and walking through it with me. You didn't give me any validation, but you definitely listened.
Yeah,
You didn't give
totally.
them any validation, but you definitely listened, you know? So you were so good at navigating the even though I know inside you were probably dying,
I was freaking out.
but you stepped up to the plate,
Yeah.
right? Under
Yeah.
pressure, and you were clutch in that moment, and it was amazing. And
Yeah.
so,
For sure.
like for you and your spouse, if you're going through something like that, like how important it is for you to just hold your spouse up. That's what we're supposed to be,
Yeah.
is each other's helpers. And if Brittany has a bum knee, I'm going to help her walk. I'm going to do whatever I can to
Thanks. But if
help
anyone's
her.
going to have a bum knee around here,
It's going to be me.
it's going to be you.
But that's what we're going to do for each other. I'm
Totally.
going to be a shoulder for her to lean on, right?
Yeah.
Same thing for her. She's going to be a shoulder for me to lean on. And the more you can think about your marriage and your relationship with your spouse like that, you're going to show up and be their teammate, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Think about it like a baseball team. A baseball team is not a one-man show. Now, one man can do a lot of things for the show, but at the end of the day, it takes a team to win the game. You have defense, you have offense, you have hitters, you have all the different positions that are playing, right? That's what our marriage is. There's going to be times where I might not do so good in the outfield, but she is pitching a killer game. And then she's also hitting the ball so well, and I'm not. And we're going to win that game because she's doing really well in the moments where I'm maybe not.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's
yeah.
good.
Anyways, Brittany, it's been about a year since you had a mental breakdown.
Yeah.
And I say that not in a rude way,
No,
but
it's not rude.
you literally
Yeah.
had somewhat of a mental
Yeah.
breakdown, and it was really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And you're doing a lot better today than you were last year. But
Yeah.
just kind of walk us through, you know, as a wife, what that's been like for you,
As a wife, or
just as a person, as a
person?
wife, wife. Same.
I mean, I think it's hard when you have a setback. I mean, it's just frustrating, you know, it's frustrating. It's hard. It has been a year since it kind of like all started, and I am doing a lot better,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
But it's still, you know, still things about it that can be irritating and frustrating, but I'm
Yeah.
working through it.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, it's not like we've talked about earlier. You're not going to find healing in one day.
No.
You
Well,
know,
that's
you're not going to be like, okay, I'm good now.
I mean, you
Like-
can, and I think that's the thing is, I think that, you know, I believe that, I think twofold, and I've talked about this when people ask me about it. You can be healed in one day. I do believe that, you know, you can have people pray over you and you can receive healing immediately. That hasn't been my story. I've asked the Lord why that's not my story.
Like, I'd really like that to be my
I'd really
story.
love that to be my story. You know, we see it over and over again where they would touch the hem of his garment and be healed. So he would touch their eyes and they could see. Like, I believe in healing. But I also know that there's the other end of the spectrum where people had a thorn in their side or whatever, you know, a limp for the rest of their life, whatever that looked like. And so for me, mental health has been an ongoing thing. I don't want to say struggle, but struggle.
Thorn in your thorn in your side.
Thorn in my side. But, you know, at the same time, I've come to a place where if you're like not in a lighter season of mental health where you're feeling like, okay, you know what, I have a handle on it, or your medication is working, whatever it looks like, where in ways, this is going to sound crazy, but I'm grateful for the things I've walked through because of the compassion it's given me, the empathy, the understanding, the intimacy that I've grown with the Lord, because I do have to depend on him daily, sometimes second by second. You know, when seasons were like really, really difficult, like, I mean, there were days it's like every second I'm like, I have to depend on the Lord just to make it through. But yeah, a year later, I am medicated. I am somewhat regulated. But I've been really working, you know, because I take medication which I've shared before, was diagnosed with ADHD late in life, 36,
and everything makes sense now.
Yeah, I mean, it does. And at first I was like, what? I would cry about it. Like, I was upset. I was like, what? Like, I have ADHD. That feels awkward to say. And now, you know, like, there's just so many things I'm like, this makes so much sense. And if you're like a woman and you're struggling, like, it's crazy to me now how many people I've seen say like, I was misdiagnosed with bipolar, with depression, with anxiety my entire life. And I actually think I have ADHD, or they've gone and gotten an ADHD diagnosis. But it's very misdiagnosed in women, like a lot.
For sure.
But I am medicated for ADHD, and now I think this is the thing. Like, you can be medicated, but you still have to do the work. I have to be honest. Like, sure. I take medicine. It helps significantly for me. I'm not a doctor. Go see a psychiatrist or your primary care physician, but it definitely helps me get to a place where I can do more work. Does that make sense? Because when you have ADHD, you have a tendency to be very dysregulated. Yeah. There's a whole thing. I mean, we could dive into the ADHD, what it is, how it works, why it is. I know way too much.
You should see her Instagram feed.
But yeah, it's just all ADHD videos, all of them. But I'm just working on that, you know? Yeah. And so many things. It's really funny when you learn something about yourself that you're like, I should have known this, because many things pointed to this. On it. And I remember one time, like, I have always felt like such an outsider. Always. My entire life, I always felt weird, strange, awkward.
Well, and your name is Brittany, which means?
Yes, which I was at a women's conference when I was like 22 years old. And it was like this sweet moment. Everyone's looking up the meaning of their name in this book that this speaker brought that was like a book on spiritual meanings of your name. I don't know what book it was, because I've never been able to find this meaning again. But I was like, wow.
But it was in there.
But I'm so excited, and everyone's had a turn and they're passing the book around, and it gets to me and I open it up and it says stranger. One word, stranger. I want to say it was like the story it gave was like Ruth or something. I don't remember. But I remember thinking, really? Stranger? That's what we're going with here? Stranger? Like, I was low-key like, Lord, come on, please. But now, or like being called unique. Like, I've been called unique.
Yeah. You guys are very
I'm a stranger. Unique. And so just kind of learning, you know, and I always joke around because I can put makeup on, I can do my hair, but like, if you see me in real life, I can be a little ratchet. I'm gonna be honest. So like, it makes
ratchet. Sense. I mean, your daughter did call you ratchet one time.
No, she called me Janky.
Oh, Janky. You're right. Janky.
From a movie, Annie?
You're janky.
Annie? Anyway. Yeah. So just always kind of feeling different, just different. Like, why does everything seem so different for other people or whatever? And then just last year, starting in about November, it was about this time, I just was like, something is seriously wrong with me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what it is and I can't seem to get out of it. And so this has kind of been the last year. I would say like for the last 6 months, I've been doing quite well. There's days, you know, I also struggle with other things too, but like I'm a psycho before I start my period. Like it's so bad.
No, you're not. You're perfect.
No, I'm diagnosing myself, but I'm pretty sure I have PMDD too, which is actually very common in women with ADHD. But I think that what happens is we do a disservice by not acknowledging that these things happen.
Yeah.
And that they exist. Because then there's even more shame.
Well, because there's so
I
many.
shouldn't feel this way because I love Jesus, and it's
so
like
many people are like, I don't want
it.
to identify as that. I don't want to identify. I'm like, you don't have to identify.
I just
as
like
that.
I just have it. Like it
It's
just
important
is
to
what
know,
it is.
like what's going on in your body.
Yes. You know, so learning and kind of laughing about it a little bit now. Sometimes I'm frustrated by it.
Totally.
I should really just do like an entire episode on like why it frustrates me, things that irritate me, and what
really
happens
should.
in my brain. But I'm like choking, but I just take it to the Lord. I laugh about it. I get annoyed. I forget things. My girls will be like,
Mid conversation.
Mom, I asked you for that like 20 times.
Oh yeah.
Or, you know, but lately because you've been so busy at work, you forget things. And I told you that you're making me feel real good about my ADHD because
I know
you're forgetting.
Because when I'm done working right now, I'm like, my brain is smush.
Yeah. But it's hard. I mean, I think, you know, mental health is really, really hard.
Yeah.
But I think that, I mean, I don't like to say too much, but I have a passion, and I don't know what this looks like, but to really just talk about it, just be to women, just be like, hey, listen, like this is
real.
And if you're struggling, you're not alone. There's no shame. But I think that's what happens is people feel a lot of shame and then they just don't talk about it. Or like your spouse, like if your spouse is, you know, dealing with it, like don't say like, it's all just in your head. Well, yeah, it is in my head, but my head might be a little broken right now.
I may have said that a few
times. You
times.
know, or like you're just making that up or that's not real. Because
What's wrong
like,
with you?
What's wrong with you? Or you're crazy.
Oof.
Ask Julian what it's like if he's said those words. Maybe twice. You're ever going to say those again?
Never going to say that again. That's for sure.
Because when he'd be like, you're being crazy. I'm like, you can
Let
say.
me show
no,
you crazy.
I'll tell him. No, I have told him. I said, you can say a lot of things to me. Do not call me crazy. Do not call me
Never
crazy.
again.
Okay? I only.
She put the wrath in me.
Don't call me crazy. Don't call me crazy.
But you are unique.
And a little bit crazy, but only I can say it. But
I didn't say it.
Anyway, so just working on like tools, you know, because you can be medicated, but it doesn't mean you can't, like that you don't do the work.
Yeah, you
know?
have to do the work for sure.
I love working out. So I walk all the time.
When I can always tell when she's having a rough day, so I look at her and I go,
You need to go for
"Hey,
a
babe,
walk."
go for a walk."
Yeah,
And she's
go
like,
for a
"Well,
walk.
no,
fine.
I'm this, I'm that." I'm like, "You're
You go for a
going
walk.
for a walk,"
Or I'm going to call you crazy.
or I'm going to say that you're the C
So
word,
like
crazy.
obviously like working out and eating healthy, I try to do my best to like eat whole foods, and I keep on like,
Just drink some soda water.
no,
I did.
but I have to get going. So we'll wrap it up in just a second here. But just eating healthy, making sure that I'm like spending time in the Word, staying regulated, and realizing that like I am different.
And being okay with it.
And being okay with it.
Yeah.
Because I think the hard part is realizing like as a woman with ADHD, like my life has to look a little bit different than like a neurotypical woman. Like a woman who can go and run like 15 errands in one day and then go home and make a big dinner for her family and do all these things. Like I salute you, but like sometimes I pull into the parking lot of the grocery store and I'm like, I'm just going to go home. I like don't have.
And literally she will.
And I'll just go home.
She'll just go home.
I'll just be like, I'll just
we
go
have no
have
food.
Julian run to the store for like 4 things. I mean, I feed my family and I go to the grocery store all the time.
I know.
I'm just
But I'm saying like
for
those
me,
moments.
there's just things that seem so easy for other people
Yeah,
that are like hard for me.
for sure.
And I would say too, like it's been helpful. I wouldn't say I'm like in an ADHD community, but like finding like people who have ADHD,
Yeah.
like women who have ADHD, and seeing like, okay, like I'm not crazy.
You're not
Like
alone. Well, you're not alone.
There are women out there who are like, yeah, the grocery store is like my least favorite thing in the whole entire world. Or,
I love the grocery
I know,
store.
but it's the thing. And I would think like I'd be in this group of people and they would like be really spontaneous and just be like, let's do this, this, and this. And I would like, could hyperventilate, like, and so realizing I'm not a bad person or I'm not like inflexible on purpose. It's just that I'm like very easily overwhelmed, overstimulated, and learning those things has actually helped me, a lot. I mean, it's
Big
a
time.
lot. There's so much, but
Yeah.
and you're supportive of it. I know like it's
course.
really weird. Like I'm weird and different.
Yeah.
And we were meeting with this couple and I said, I'm basically a walking contradiction.
Yeah, it's true.
In a lot of ways, because something that like crowds bother me for the most part. Like crowds bother me, or like if people touch me. But like I can go to Disneyland. Disneyland's like my favorite place in the world, and I can own that place, man. I know where everything is.
Don't bother her when she's there.
And it doesn't really bother me if someone like bumps up agast me, and I know there's germs everywhere.
What's happening?
Dopamine hit like crazy. And so I own it now. Like I'm a walking contradiction.
For sure.
I don't like to sit outside if there's a lot of birds. Birds freak me out. Like there's just so many things.
She can't even relax and have a dinner because birds.
Instead of being like, I just won't say anything, I'll just be like, walk up to the table and be like, I can't sit at this table. I'm sorry.
Now she does, yeah.
Because I know I'll be miserable the whole time.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm working on it.
So she comes off strong. She's just being honest.
Well, that's the thing. I hid it for so long, which I think when you...
And now you don't at all.
I have to go. But when you are a woman with ADHD and you don't, especially if you don't realize you have it, there's this thing that they say you mask. You basically pretend like everything's fine when it's not.
Yep.
Because you're so afraid that if people saw who you really were, or who you really are, you would totally freak them out.
True.
Which is true.
Yeah.
But I think if you can be like, hey, this is like, not everyone. I don't walk around and go like, I can't sit there. I can't do that. But finding people who you can be honest and just be like, hey, like I am uncomfortable. So if you have someone in your life that's a little
spicy,
whatever you want to call me, and it's not all the time like that. That's
for
the
sure.
hard part.
No, and honestly,
but I am also trying to learn to work through those things.
Yeah.
Like I don't want people to have to change their lives for me.
For sure.
So it's me learning how to regulate and be more prepared and be like, I'm okay. Everything's okay. And being a good example for like our girls, and that's why I have fought so hard.
Yeah.
Like to, overcome it and like have the Lord speak to me and be like, okay, like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, if you didn't get anything out of it today besides that we're crazy or we're different or anything like that.
If you call me crazy.
But let me tell you, if anything, if you do take anything from today, just remember like we're just figuring out who we are, and I think it's so important for you in your life and your marriage. It's important for you to figure out who you are and be honest and have those honest conversations and be raw in such a way where you can figure those things out and then not be judgmental towards each other, and being supportive of each other, because everything that she's been going through, that she's been walking through is really hard for me. It's like, I'll be honest, it's very hard to walk through with her and I don't get it. At the same time, I'm here and I'm supportive and I'm going to walk through it with her, even though sometimes I'm like, what in the world, right? But I'm going to support and love her no matter what. And this vice versa. When I went through the things that I went through, she was there. She was supportive. She was my backbone. So that's what marriage is about, right? Marriage is about supporting one another, being there for one another, showing up for one another, and just doing everything that you can to have a successful marriage. Well, Brittany's got to go, so we'll see you next time.
Bye.
We were young, we were dumb and in love, but we knew this was made for us. No matter what we faced it together. Through the fire and the pain, we just kept holding on. Now look at us, still standing strong.